Hello and welcome to the Property Talks podcast with me, your host, Adam Pigot. I am the CCO of OpenBrix, the soon-to-be launched property platform for the new generation. The show is focused on the good, the bad and the ugly in the property and estate agency industry. What do the new generation want and how can we as estate agents deliver and grow? We hope you enjoy.
Welcome to episode 2 of this podcast. I am here with Adam Pigot, CCO of OpenBrix. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks Elliot. Thanks for sorting this out today. Yep.
No worries at all. And Alexandra Morris, CEO of MakeurMove.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm alright, thank you. And you?
Very well, thank you. How was your journey down from Manchester?
Yes, nice. Like I said, sunny up there and wet down here, which makes a nice change.
You brought the weather with you?
Yes, probably. Yeah.
Adam, kick us off. Give us a high-level overview of OpenBrix.
Fine, thanks Elliot. Well, OpenBrix is a property portal for the new generation that's being launched this autumn. Exciting. It is the first of its kind in the UK and possibly globally. As far as we know, there is no one else doing this at the moment. Ultimately, it's a property portal, performs similar functions to Rightmove and Zoopla and the other portals. However, this is based on blockchain technology, and that's where the sort of crypto talk starts and stops, really, because it's just the platform that it sits on. And what this brings is it's a peer-to-peer platform, so it's decentralized. Mm-hmm. So currently, the agents are beholden to the entity, say Rightmove or Zoopla. All the data's uploaded. They control everything. They control the prices, the price hikes. They can sell your data. They can do pretty much what they like. And to be fair, it's a brilliant concept that Rightmove have done. I mean, they've invented the wheel as far as I'm concerned. But it's expensive. And some agents, if they've been able to, and there's obviously on the market as well at the moment, but if you're an agent, you've been invited on and you become a shareholder at early stage, then clearly you're getting massive discounts. And I know because I sold my traditional agent 5 years ago, and I know what I was paying per month for 3 offices, and it was around about £11,500 a month. So, and I know that when I sold out to Countrywide, who gave me a very good price, they told my number 2 that don't worry about it, it's only £50 per office from now on. So if you're not one of the big boys, you do pay an awful lot.
So they're almost making their money up on the independents.
Well, it's one of the most profitable businesses in the UK. So it's decentralized. So an agent comes on, pays a monthly subscription, and that doesn't go up unless the majority, because every node, if you like, every member of the community has a vote. And one brand, one vote. So if you're an office with 70 national branches, you still get one vote. So
what you're saying is, if the price is to go up,
51% of the community have to lead it, so OpenBrix are effectively the caretakers of the platform. The platform's owned and run by the community, which is the estate agents. So we're very much built on supporting the estate agents. We want this to work for them, and there's going to be levels of information on it which Rightmove don't have, and that will be that'll probably be version 2. So we're going to be about 4 or 5 months after we launch in autumn that will come in. So when it originally gets launched, it's just going to be a search engine for property.
So this podcast is very much geared towards the estate agents, and anything that around the table we can give them hints and tips. And now's a nice little time to introduce, obviously, Alexandra Morris. Can you give us a run through of MakeurMove, what it's about, because it's not your conventional estate agency?
No. So MakeurMove is an online lettings platform, or AKA an online letting agent. The idea behind MakeurMove was to empower landlords and also create a bit more clarity between landlords and tenants in England primarily, and then across the UK, for what goes on in the process of lettings properties, managing properties, turning them over at the end. And it was all centred around the technology that we provided. So our solution was to give everyone the power of lettings in their pocket. So it was about allowing landlords and tenants to be introduced to each other in a quicker, more efficient way that removed most of the cost associated with lettings properties. Since then, we've kind of developed the platform further. So our aim now is to deliver more of a landlord-centric tool that allows them to understand exactly what their portfolio does, how much it's worth, what the costs are for buying property, what the cost is of letting property, what the value of that portfolio might be in the future, but also understand, what the turnover's like on their property, who's living there, the information that the tenant needs to have, because it's a really inefficient process. There's no real record keeping about the things that go on in the property, so the repairs that are done, the products that are purchased, the warranties that exist.
So as a complete novice, that is mad.
Yeah, it's crazy. So you just pay over and over again for exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And because it's all reactive and there's no real preparation or understanding, it increases the overall cost, and the person who pays that is the tenant. So if you can add efficiency at the landlord and agent side of things, the person that will benefit the most is the tenant. So, and at the same time, the landlord gets to increase the value in their portfolio, and the agent gets to be seen as a hero rather than a villain. So that's our aim.
So is this a web app? This is an app as well?
Yeah, we don't have an app.
Okay.
No, everything's functioned through the website.
Yep.
It's mobile responsive, so you can have it on your mobile. Smartphone tends to be how people communicate with us. We can use email, but most of our landlords communicate with us through SMS. Most of the work that's done around viewing arrangements, reminders, offers, referencing process, tenancy contracts is all done through SMS or online signature services.
What made you go down that route rather than the traditional email route?
Email is one of those things that I think every business would do without if they could. It's such an administratively heavy process. You can literally have one person employed just to read and delete half of your emails and then read and respond to the other half. In the lettings and estate agency world, the email issue is to do with leads that come in from the portals. So you've got tenant inquiries, purchase inquiries, landlord inquiries, vendor inquiries, valuation requests that all come in. And that process is usually overlooked by a high street agent. I think the online platforms, the online agents have nailed that a little bit more. Their understanding is that they need to respond to those very, very quickly.
Yep.
Most of them have built technologies or have implemented technologies that allow them to auto-respond to these emails.
Yep.
There's a few new companies that are popping up, and that's their sole purpose. For us, it was one of the first things we did, because as a new startup, as one of the first, if not the first, online presence in the lettings world, we had one member of staff, and that one member of staff was never going to be able to handle inquiries on 400 properties. So the first thing we did is build that so that we didn't have to respond to it. And what we quickly understood is back in those days, SMS was new, and people really were much more likely to respond to a message that pinged on their phone than an email that sat in their inbox. And this is back when you opened your email inbox and there was 300 and you just went, I can't be bothered.
Yeah, I'm not even going to start.
Yeah.
I remember those.
So what's that's probably a slight difference to how you would have ran your estate agency.
Well, I started mine in 1989, so I was
different.
cutting edge. I had a fax, waxy paper with all the streaks, and but we thought we were pretty much there at that time. And then my sort of had 3 offices, and my sort of number one was much more technically advanced than I was, and he told me this thing about the internet is coming, the web, and I went, it's never going to take off. Gavin, it'll never take off. I said, it's a blip. It's not going to happen. So I was very wrong in that. So obviously technology changed everything. But mine, we were a letting specialist as well. And in those times, in the late 80s and early 90s, very few estate agents did lettings. So in fact, I didn't have any. I was one of 3 agents in my county of Surrey that actually specialised in lettings. So all the local estate agents, when they got an inquiry about lettings, would literally just pass them on to us. No commission. They didn't want it. They didn't care. So in the first 4 years of my business, it was just great. I had so many. I mean, we just built up a really whapping great big head start.
Yeah.
And then when the agents sort of twigged and thought, hang on a sec, we should do this. I'd already got a nice portfolio lined up, and so it was quite easy. And yeah, the we saw the internet coming in, and then Messenger pop up, so you could communicate with your staff quite easily. That was great fun. Yeah, WinPop, I think it was called, if I remember rightly. Do you remember that?
No.
Oh, okay, you're probably still at school.
Neither do I.
But yeah, so but I think the lettings is very different to sales, and I'm not convinced that the online sales is still it's not there yet.
No.
OpenBrix are leading the way with it, but they're struggling.
Is that because people, when they're actually making a purchase, they want that physical contact, or is it lettings a little bit of a less?
I think
transaction maybe.
Lettings and sales is different. A letting agent and an estate agent are completely different beasts as well. They think differently. They approach things differently.
There's an awful lot more compliance as well.
There is, but although lettings is definitely going that way.
No, I mean I think the letting industry
you could opt to be more compliant as a letting agent before the requirements came in.
Yes, indeed, as you did, I believe.
Buyers and sellers, it's a much more emotional transaction.
Yeah.
Selling a property, an asset, most of the time you're selling in order to purchase something else. There's high pressure. You need that sort of reassuring, knowledgeable person, and I personally believe estate agency should be locally delivered. I don't think you can do it from a national hub because of that mentality, the fact that the vendor and the buyer are completely at risk of this process completely falling apart if it's not handled professionally, and that I think that's why we have such a high
I agree.
fallout on the sales.
I agree. I think there's on the letting side, I think landlords, there are a large group of landlords. I wouldn't guess what percentage. You probably could give that more accurately than I could, but there's a large number of landlords who are quite knowledgeable.
Yep.
But the legislation that's coming in is hard for them to keep up.
They don't keep up.
No.
That's a real
and
issue.
I think that's where an agency like yours has shown to be really valuable. I still believe if someone's got a property they bought for investment purposes and they're fairly new to it and they don't want to manage it because they'd like an agent to manage it because they don't understand it all and they're a little bit nervous. I still think a local agent is probably merited for that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an increasing number of very knowledgeable landlords out there who don't have the up-to-date knowledge of compliance, and it's coming in like a tsunami at the moment. There's wave after wave of it. And, then someone like MakeurMove, like yourself, I think it's an invaluable tool. And I could see MakeurMove doing really well.
Yeah, I mean, I should disagree with you, shouldn't I? Say
You should,
that the local agent is no better or worse than the online agent, and in some parts that's probably true. But actually, when it comes to managing your property, if you're a hands-off landlord and you want nothing to do with it, you will benefit from that local knowledge, and you will benefit from them being around the corner. And the truth is, they will deliver exactly the same service.
I couldn't agree.
Online.
It's perception.
Yeah,
I think it's the perception that needs to change.
And we don't want to replace that anyway.
No.
Our target is for landlords who wouldn't necessarily use an agent. And our idea is to professionalise the entire industry by giving them the tools that agents benefit from. And you can also argue that agents have benefited from these tools for many years themselves without passing those benefits on to the landlord.
That's very true.
They've still put themselves in between the information and the client. And
is that why do you think they do that? Is that so that they
I think they believe
protect
it's
their
some
job?
sort of perfection. It's protection, but actually just show them what
if-
you're doing.
if
That's your proof that you're doing the job.
I totally agree. I remember when various tax laws came in and they altered, and when gas regulations came in '96, I'd make a big thing about it to clients because I'd be saying, "Oh, it's really complicated, but don't worry, we'll look after it for you."
Yeah.
And you are providing
Smoke
a
and
service
mirrors.
a little bit, yeah. But the compliance now, it's really intensive.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, I know you're totally up to speed with it, but
How do you stay up to speed with it?
It is. I read a lot.
Right.
I read a lot. I have a lot of Google alerts. I like to get into debates with the likes of Shelter, Generation Rent, various other. I also talk to a lot of other agents, competitors, landlords, tenants, but I make it my job to stay ahead of what's going on. From a technical point of view, running a platform, we have to, because if our service falls behind the legislative approach or the regulations that come in, then it's a pointless service.
It becomes null and void.
Exactly. So we have to be ahead of it. And when a simple change like stamp duty, purchases, the tax, mortgage tax relief comes in, you have to plan so far in advance to make sure that you're aligned with those changes coming in, so that when you push the button, your platform is able to handle those.
So whilst we're talking about regulation changes, let's discuss the tenant fee ban, and let's get Adam. Let's start with Adam. Adam, what's your thoughts on the tenant fee ban, and then Alex will come to you.
Well, I don't know your view on this, so I'm going to shoot from the hip here. I think it's foolish. On the other hand, I think there were charges, and I won't name the agents, but there are some agents out there who were really taking the Michael.
Yeah.
The charges were ridiculous. However, there are some fundamental things that it's in the tenant's interest to ensure that are covered, like inventories, like a decent inventory, a decent tenants agreement that's up to date with all current legislation, references, they come at a cost. And I think to take away that cost from the tenants who, you're arriving at a tenancy, wanting to take up a tenancy, and you want to prove that you're a good tenant. And so there are documents that need to be provided that for a good tenant to hook up with a good landlord, and to be in a good property and have a proper bona fide tenancy. It comes at a cost, and I think to say to a tenant you don't pay anything, I think is foolish. So my view is that it was wrong to scrap all the tenant fees, but they should have been capped.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
So you can't have people taking the mic.
Yeah, I think there should have been a capped cost.
Yeah.
But you may disagree.
I agree to an extent. I actually don't think these go far enough. If you want to clean up an industry which has, let's say the estate agents, go back to your example before of estate agents in your local area not touching lettings and passing you the leads, and then quickly realising that there was some cash to be had in that, and then approaching it and bringing it in, but not really doing it in a professional way, understanding the people that actually are the clients within there.
That's correct.
The one thing the tenant fee ban does do is absolutely nail your client is a landlord. Your tenants are a byproduct of that service that you're providing, and that's how they should be treated. But that doesn't mean that they're any less important than the landlord is. As an agent, if you find a good tenant and they stay in a property for 5 years, then surely you should be as congratulated. For someone who finds a tenant and then turns it over 12 months later and gets another set of fees, I just think the model itself doesn't work. And if you're going to ban all fees, then there needs to be much more done around the clean-up approach to the regulations. It's too intense. There's too much that has to be done. There's too many hoops to be jumped through. The law is too much on the side of the tenant, which doesn't really sit well with the whole agents are there to provide clients, which are landlord services. So you need to address the courts issue, the way in which maintenance is handled, the way in which the properties are fit for habitation. We've got to look at things like agents are not encouraged to check the quality of the stock that they've got before they introduce a tenant to it. They just want the instruction and then they want to get paid. Landlords are not encouraged to spend money on their properties, especially where they've not necessarily purchased that specifically as a property for buy-to-let, and they don't necessarily have the funds to sit there and spend £4,000 every time it needs to be turned over, or even allocate a budget for that every 3 or 5 years. And in order to make sure that the tenant's happy, you have to make sure that the property is a good standard. But agents will let whatever they're given, and that's the truth of it, because it's all on a pay per use of the service model. There's no benefits.
Do you think that part of that problem is because landlords, I don't know what percentage, but many landlords multi-instruct, because that puts the agent under a bit of pressure to let the property. And I always used to my old days, and maybe because I could, I would say to a client, look, if you're going to instruct me, you instruct me on my own. And if
Sole agent.
And if you want to get rid of me at any time, you pick up the phone, I'll stop immediately. You don't have to give notice. But please do not instruct me with another agent, because then it becomes a bun fight and a race to get a tenant in.
It's not my experience. I think the landlords we speak to don't do that. I think because lettings is such a high turnover. If you've got in my opinion, if we have a property that's on for more than 21 days, we start to go, what's wrong with this property?
Yeah.
If we've got a property that's done more than a dozen viewings, we start to question the property, and then you direct it into a different conversation with the landlord. Then it's not, what can we do for you to help you let your property? And it's more, what do you need to do with your property to get it let at the price that you want it
so
for?
Generally, if it's been on for more than 21 days or it's had more than 12 viewings,
we start to question it.
Something's seriously wrong.
Yeah. And probably before that point, we would expect to have an offer within 6 to 8 viewings. And we would normally expect to have received an offer which is acceptable to the landlord within 7 to 10 days. When we use statistics to say that we mean let as in the contracts, the reference in the contracts are signed. So our typical turnaround is 12 to 15 days. But we would expect to have it if it's presentable, if it's available, if it does what it says in the description, if it is what it is, and it's at the fair market price, it should let within the first couple of viewings. So,
I agree.
Given the heat that's in the market, the only reason that it won't do is if it's a very specialist type of property, or it's in out in the sticks,
or there's something wrong with it,
or there's something,
or it's overpriced.
Yeah.
Do you find landlords in your model tend to overvalue their properties?
No.
Okay, very interesting.
And I think I think a lot of landlords that use high street agents will be directed by the agent.
Yeah.
And I think the agent who works on a commission is encouraged to inflate the value.
To get the instruction?
Commission based.
Absolutely.
But also to get the instruction.
Yeah. I can let this for £900 when it's only worth £850.
And if you're the landlord, you're going, well, yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
An extra £100, yeah.
I used to find that very frustrating.
And so our landlords, the landlords I speak to anyway, and I guess I do still answer the phone, the landlords I speak to tell me that they're more interested in having a tenant in the property that's happy, that stays. They don't want to deal with the administration of
a good
They're
tenant.
not bothered about doing renewals. They're happy for them to be on rolling contracts. They don't want to mess around with deposits like this. Part of the Tenant Fee Act was the 5-week deposit cap. There's been a lot of hype made about this in the industry, and I welcome deposit replacement schemes or alternative schemes, whatever you want to call them. However, the panic that has ensued after the first, I was on a few Facebook groups on the 2nd of June, and all you could see was, oh my God, what do I do? I've got a 6-week deposit, what do I do? And it was like, just calm down. That's what you do, just calm down. It's another lead gen tool for agents, and if they haven't made use of that, that's definitely one I'd recommend.
Out of interest, on the tenant fee ban, did you, it came in June the 1st, isn't it, this year? Did you start doing that on the 1st of June, or
no,
did you do it before?
We were guilty. We definitely charged tenants for referencing. We did base ours on this time spent doing that service. So our fee was proportionate to the cost it actually incurred, both in the cost of the reference check and the credit check and the time that we spent on it operationally. In January, we abolished those fees.
Oh wow!
And we created a new service.
Well before.
Yeah. We decided, and if we had the technology, the time to do it, we'd have done it sooner. But we needed to put it took us 3 months to build the tool that we needed to rebuild in order to facilitate that. And then we launched a subscription service, which was
to your landlord clients.
Twofold benefit to the landlord clients.
This is interesting.
Yeah, so our subscription service allows landlords to advertise property whenever they need it. So if a tenant gives notice, they can re-advertise it on all the portals
without further cost.
Without any additional cost. They get the references done every time they need it, and they get their tenancy contracts, their renewals, the rent collection, legal eviction cover, and we also do a property license check-in through Get Renter, which is a really good scheme. So they're automatically added into that. So if there is any changes to the local authority schemes, they will be notified straight away, and then we will help them through that process.
Wow. So how much is the subscription?
It's £12 a month at the moment.
£12 a month?
Yes.
Why does that sound ridiculously cheap?
It is. It is cheap, but
cheap.
It requires, if you compare it to the service that a high street agent gives, it's not comparable. It's a completely different service.
Yeah.
This is, you're paying for access to the platform. You will be doing it yourself. You do the viewings yourself. If you want additional stuff, then you can pay for it. It's purchase what you need. I think this is the future of lettings. I do think that there are two types of clients, as you said, the ones that don't want anything to do with it and the ones that want to control everything. And they need the appropriate tools to do it. So they need to be on top of legislation, regulation, they need advice, they need to make sure that they're setting everything up in the correct way. So we even
and MakeurMove would do with that for them.
Yeah, we do deposit collection, deposit lodging, contract signing.
All for less than 150 quid a year.
And you store it as well within our platform too. So you can get access to all the documents, no nor downloading it, putting it on your computer, not knowing where it is.
And does that include the advertising on the portals?
Yep.
Good Lord.
Rightmove, Zoopla, Prime Location, and various other partner sites that we use as well.
Yeah. Go on then. Do you pay a lot for your portals?
Yes, we do. Yes.
But you might do.
Yes. We operate as an online agent under a geographical pricing model with Rightmove.
So how does that work then?
Yeah, so your guess is as good as mine.
Right.
I've been trying to master that for the last 6 years.
So they come up with a monthly figure. I mean, give us a ballpark.
They have an algorithm,
right?
I believe.
This is Rightmove.
Yeah. So the way in which they tackle this is, and the reason they've approached it this way is because they want to make pricing fair for all their members. So if you're a high street agent, you pay per branch. As you said, you've got some
different prices though.
So you have your core membership price, then you have various other options that you can tag on, and then you've got all your advertising and marketing stuff that you can do on top. The online agent could, in theory, pay for one branch, but could be your competition in 25 different areas.
In wherever you are in the UK.
Exactly. The difference is that they usually spread themselves a little bit thinner. So whilst you have, they're attracting different clients, and they just really wish that the agents of the world would just get on with each other. The online agent is not going to attract the same client as the high street agent. They are two different entities set up to do two different jobs, and they should just work alongside each other. In fact, the battle between the online and the high street agent is what's created this weird pricing model, the approach that the portals have, and gives the portals the power that they have.
Am I right in saying that when the onlines first started to come on about 5-6 years ago, when there seemed to be a bit of a gluttony, didn't some of the portals refuse to take on?
Yeah, so on the market started with that as well. So,
really?
Yeah. So although they have now relaxed that, so on the market we'll let onliners onto the platform. Rightmove were intense with the regulation with us at the very beginning. They may saw us as competition. They probably won't own up to it. They probably don't care.
I've heard there's been quite high price hikes recently in some of the
ours has gone up 25% this year and 25% last year.
Good Lord.
So we're now paying double what we were paying 2 years ago. Well, actually 13 months ago, if you want to be exact. So when asked why that was, they said, I think the account manager used a word like, you got 9,000 inquiries from us last year, and I said we got the same from Zoopla, and we're paying nowhere near that with Zoopla. So
I mean, the problem is that it's got to such a point where
they can charge what they want.
They can charge what they want.
Yeah.
And and I've seen this in other industries where Rightmove is so essential to everybody's lives within property.
You take a risk not using them.
Absolutely.
It's a perception though, isn't it?
It is a perception.
When you first started out, it's genius, because it was, we just kept, I don't know how you guys came across it, but I was on a bus going down Oxford Road in Manchester, Oxford Street, whatever, in Manchester, and there was a big sign outside a cafe, which is where all the students used to sit, and alongside it was Rightmove, find your property here, and we were like, what's that? What's this Rightmove thing? And then you start to do a bit of research. Now this was before I got involved in property in a bigger way, but as a tenant, as someone who might be interested in buying property, it was genius, because prior to that, the only thing I could do was go down the high street into every single shop, register my details, print out a load of pieces of paper and take them home, and then be completely guffawed about what I actually do.
You've got access to hundreds of properties within your specific search,
and when you're bored,
at your fingertips. Literally at your fingertips. So from the buyers or the tenant's perspective, it's unbelievable.
And then they're the ones who are asking the agents for it, which was again genius by Rightmove, because actually then I want to be on Rightmove came to be the thing that everyone talks about, which also opened the door to the online market, because then it was like, well, actually, if you want to be on Rightmove, you're going to need to use an online, aren't you? Here we are, and it created a market, and you have to applaud a business that's able to do that and then hold on to that strength for the length of time that they've done.
They've done very well.
But they do need to watch themselves.
Well, we do. I mean, we're not telling any of our agents who we're starting to sort of register and take on. We're doing pretty well. We haven't even started the launch yet. But we're telling everyone, look, we're not saying come off Rightmove, because they're brilliant. I wouldn't advocate that at all. What we are saying is, look, that things evolve. And what we're bringing in is the next evolvement, and the cost is going to be low cost, and it stays at that level.
It's creating an alternative.
Yeah,
which is what you need.
Yeah, so it's good. I've got another customer.
Yes, well, yes.
I'll invoice you my commission.
Sorry, I didn't hear it. Sorry, something wrong with the microphone.
So let's discuss the pros and the cons versus the online lettings agency versus the traditional high street lettings agency. So
I think as Alex alluded to here, I think they're fundamentally two very different types of client.
Which is something that before this conversation I wouldn't have even encountered.
I think there are people who will prefer and will continue for the foreseeable future to use a local agent because of perception. I agree, having been involved and seen both sides of this now, I can see the service that, for example, MakeurMove is offering. I mean, it's absolutely superb, and it ticks all the boxes. So it's generally very impressive. But I think the perception is still out there. But I do think the type of customer who you're really going to hook, from what from what I know about it and what you've told me, is the landlord who just wants to do it himself, but now he needs the platforms and the knowledge, because the legislation is always evolving, and you don't want to slip up. So I see them, as you just said, I think they should be working together.
Well, the thing that I quite like when you were talking about MakeurMove, from somebody who's always been interested in property and has always been interested about how agents and lettings agents operate, is you're providing complete clarity on the ins and outs of record, of data. Data is power, data is king, but particularly on the financial side as well. So if I'm a landlord, I can go on and see exactly where I can drive more value potentially out of my property, but also see who's been in there, see the inventories. It's fully recorded, which is what you wouldn't get nowadays. Yeah,
you don't. And we get inquiries. I say that they are two different characters. Like I say, you've got good agents and you've got bad agents. You've got good online platforms and you've got bad online platforms. That's the same with everything. When we talk to people that have had a negative experience with an agent, whether it be an online or a high street, the one thing that they really struggle with is, well, where do I get this tenancy agreement, and where do I get those references, and where do I get this inventory? And that is not yours. You don't own that as the agent. That's theirs. That's your proof that you've done the job you said you were going to do. That is the service you're providing. It isn't just going and meeting someone at a property, opening the door and giving them a key. That isn't the job that you've been instructed to do. You've been instructed to find them a tenant and to make sure you recognise their risks and prepare for any risks that they may have down the road. It is no good sitting there and saying, well, it's all right, this tenant's good, we referenced them, and they'd paid the rent, they definitely won't cause an issue. As an agent, you're responsible for making sure that the most up-to-date stuff is in place for your client. So you have served that how to rent guide, you have proof that you've served that how to rent guide, you have given them a copy of the EPC, the gas safety certificate, you have a fully recorded photographic inventory, which is theirs, which they can take and use anytime they need to. That's fundamentally what we were set up to do. It was to give the landlords the tools to have it all in one place, to know exactly where it is, to be able to access it, and to do the same for the tenant as well. And the other thing is to know exactly how much that costs. So we are quite open with the various companies that we partner with. Some might say that we're hybrid in a way. We partner with various services across the UK to provide viewing services. So we can do accompanied viewings using the Viewer, is who we use. We work with No Letting Go for professional inventories, check-ins, check-outs. We work with Focal Agent for photography and things like that. So we're able to offer everything that your high street agent will offer. Yes, it may be more expensive in parts. It may also be less expensive in parts, but ultimately it's yours. So that's the reason why you would go and use an online agent, is because, rightly or wrongly, you might be put off by the high street, but it's yours. It's your stuff. It's your property portfolio. It's your documents. It's your information. It's your security. It's your risk, and it's where you need it to be. So it's not ours. We won't keep it from you. It's there. So, and that's why I think the online agent actually opens the door to high street agents, to a whole new set of clients that they probably would not have been able to get access to without the online agent. So, and I believe the last statistics were 50%, if not more, of landlords don't use an agent for the entirety of that process.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Around 40% use them for fully managed. The other 60%-ish may use a mixture of no agents at all, or agents just to do a tenant find service. And the reason, because they want to make sure it's all set up properly. They don't want the risks if they ever need to serve a Section 21 or a Section 8, which is again under threat, that they've messed that up. So they want the professional approach for that. And I think if agents wake up and adapt to what clients actually want, we can all work side by side to deliver a better industry for everyone. So
would you say that's also, partly why the industry gets a bit of a bad rap?
Yeah, I think there's been over the last, well, when I first started 11 years ago, you would go and view a property. You, as a tenant, this was, so you go and view a property, you'd say you like it, and then the guy would say, okay, it's £300, put your application in, and they, unbeknown to you, would take the same £300 for 4 other people. And if you can't do things like that, and know that is, it's going to cause an issue, and then they say, oh, you failed, right, well, show me how I failed. Oh, well, we can't, sorry, it's private and confidential. Yeah, it's my private and confidential data.
And they'd keep you £300?
Of course they would.
Oh,
so there was some, and that's going to happen in any industry where there isn't regulation. And I think the majority of agents listening to this that read various articles would agree that type of practice is not the type of thing that we all want to see. But that is, for me, the reason why we're facing some of these things now. And the agents that will survive are the ones that take the client first approach and digital first. Client first, digital first. It's got to be about the service, the people and the technology. You can't do one without the other. So.
No, I agree.
So pros and cons, if that was the actual question. The pros of using the online agent is the speed at which things can be done, the access of which you and your tenants can get to the information. The cons of using the online agent is the perception that they might not have the local knowledge that you need. They may be a bit more remote. When it comes to things like maintenance and safety, it may take a little bit longer to get that stuff done.
I suppose you don't see many of your clients, do you?
We don't. I've seen more than I thought I would. I've met quite a few face to face.
That's a good thing and a bad thing.
But do you think that hinders the business from a customer service perspective?
No, because when they want to be able to speak to someone. Now, your average high street agent, yours might be different, but you might have 5-6 people working in the lettings and management department. 1 or 2 of those at any one time might be out on viewings, or on holiday, off sick. If they're managing 150 properties between them, and they've also got advertised at any one point 30-40 properties, how are those other 3 people going to be able to deal with that? When it really matters, can your client call you and have that conversation? They will pop down and see you face to face, but usually because they haven't been able to get through on the phone for the last week. And that's the only benefit. If you can't get through, you can actually go and knock on the door. But we have a call centre, and our calls are priority for us. So if they call, they will speak to someone. And if they need to speak to somebody who's a bit more senior, who understands a bit more, has a bit more experience, has a bit of legal knowledge, then that will come through to the relevant people, including me. So
it's a good thing. I mean, I remember one of my branches, we had clients used to come in for coffees. Literally, it's like you'd have to obviously stop what you're doing and talk to them. They're passing because they're doing the high street shop. And I remember there was one particular client who was really, really nice, but just took up a lot of your time. And there was never anything important. He'd literally pop in and sit down in front of you. And one day, the office manager, I was visiting the branch just for the day, and my office manager was there, and we had about 2-3 other members of staff were sitting. And suddenly, from across the zebra crossing outside the office, we saw this client coming in. All I remember, I can't remember his name, but it was a really hot summer's day, and he had a woolly hat on. And my colleague, the office manager, just quickly said, "Oh no, Mr. Such and Such is coming," and hid under his desk. So two of the other two other girls ran out into the kitchen. One other girl grabbed a phone, and I grabbed a phone because I don't want being left standing here. And there was this 2-minute sort of pause where this guy came in, and my colleague had said, "Oh, excuse me," and just directed him to sit in front of Gavin's desk. And of course, Gavin's under the desk. And eventually, you can hear sniggering from the kitchen. It's really unprofessional. And suddenly, my other colleague who was pretending to be on the phone said, Gavin, there's someone sitting at your desk." So Gavin then has to slowly put his head up from my desk and say, "I'm just cleaning a stain on the carpet." And everyone just burst out laughing. This guy just got up and walked out. And I remember thinking, that wasn't professional.
No.
But it would take up a lot of your time having clients come in. So it's kind of good and bad. If they can ring you on the phone, presumably they're ringing for a reason.
We can end up on hour-long conversations for something that really was addressed in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But they all want to tell the stories.
Yeah.
So they all want to tell you about their experience.
There is a relationship between your client, from the high street agent point of view. I think they have, the idea is to have a really good, close relationship with their landlords. And I think that does work. And it must be in a way harder, but obviously they can ring you, and it's perhaps a little bit more concise.
I mean, the thing is, you can still have that relationship over the phone. You've got, for God knows how many portals, you'll have an account manager. You may or may not see them face to face. You may just know them literally over the phone. Mm-hmm. But you will build up a relationship over X number of months or years and get to know how they operate. So you can still presumably build that positive relationship. Definitely.
I mean, we've got in excess of 30,000 properties on our system, from around 24,000 landlords. And yet my staff will sit, we're in a quite small office.
24,000 landlords?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And they will know exactly who it is they're going to speak to, so they'll know the type of landlords that want a phone, and they'll know the type of landlords that just want to send a quick text. Mm-hmm. And, we get some instructions over text message, and you go in, really? Like, that's like an essay on a text message. But that's how they choose to communicate. And they all know that, we've had little conversations and be like, "Oh, such and such a body is so lovely. It's so lovely. It's just, I hope he gets this right," And then they'll have a conversation and be like, "They're such a
nightmare."
Yeah. You can't, anything you say to them is argumentative, or every time they do something with you, it's, "I want compensation because this hasn't gone right." Yeah. And yet they're back 6 months later. Yeah. It's just who they are.
Do you find, though, if you've got a landlord who's using the platform to do the sort of basic, say, the £12 subscription, they want to be hands-on themselves, do they come back to you, say, if there's an argument over a tenancy deposit or non-payment of rent, do they try and involve you at that point?
Oh, absolutely.
And what do you tend to do? Do you advise them, or will you? We
advise everyone, We won't give solid legal advice. If you want legal advice, go and see a solicitor.
Right.
But we will give advice on the process that you should follow. Okay. And we'll do the same for tenants. We don't just do this for landlords. We interact. We've got in excess of 230,000 registered applicants on our system.
How many?
Yeah, 230,000. And they'll be the ones that phone up for advice more than the landlords will. They're the ones that, generally speaking, there are more tenants out there that have had a bad experience than there are landlords, just because of the volumes that's involved. I
remember. I mean, it's a very tenuous relationship, landlord-tenant. You're kind of walking on ice from day one. I mean, most of them work, and when they work, they're superb. But I remember sometimes you're literally like a marriage guidance counsellor. You're going making phone call to one and then to the other, and you're trying to get them to both see what is actually a reasonable middle ground, and neither would.
And that's where the agent adds the most value.
Yeah.
That's where the agent...
And the high streets do that as well. I know. Absolutely. When I get a landlord who say, "I just want you to do the introduction," I mean, they'll and any agent listen to this, you'll know this. As soon as something goes wrong, they've negotiated your fee down. They don't want you involved. As soon as something goes wrong, they're right in your office or on the phone, and you've got to do the right thing. And I'm pretty much most agents will get involved and do what they can.
And then you've got to say next time, look.
And whatever you do is wrong.
Yeah.
And whatever you do is wrong because, you haven't helped the tenant enough and you
Yeah.
haven't helped your client enough and I'm paying this fee. It's a really difficult relationship when things start to get a bit touchy.
Yeah, it is. And it's unfortunate. I fell into lettings from conveyancing. So I did a stint in a conveyancing firm, handling remortgages and purchase and sales, and I understood quite quickly that what the conveyancer is very good at doing is shielding both parties, seller, and they act for more than one. So you've got the seller, you've got the buyer, you've got the mortgage lender. You might have a transfer of equity involved, an ex-partner moving off it. They have to deal with all those different parties, and what they're very good at doing is getting only the information that needs to be put across without it feeling like they're hiding stuff. And that's where I think the estate agency world and the letting agency world can take a little bit of input from. That's how they should approach it. So there are certain things that you don't really need to tell your landlord. You don't need to tell your landlord that the tenant may have put 2 pictures up on a wall. You can let them get away with it because you're actually acting.
And
for
if
the
it's a
landlord.
problem, if it's a problem, let it be a problem at the end of the tenancy. At the end, no, absolutely, logic.
But you do need to tell them that you went and did an inspection.
Correct.
So there's a difference.
So we're going to go off piste here.
Go on.
I want to know what your strangest situation is that you've ever encountered from being a lettings agent.
Well, I think I was in week 3 of being a new negotiator back in the late 80s, and I went to do an inspection on a I think it must have been about 11,000 square foot of house in St George's Hill in Weybridge. And it was paying, late 80s, it was paying about $5,500 a month, which is a lot. It's a lot now.
So we're talking a plush property.
Oh, it was huge. Yeah. Absolutely lovely. Top of the range. And going in and doing an inspection, and the tenant opened the door. It's a lovely, great big sort of gabled door, and went in, and I could smell burning. And there was a lot of people in there. A lot of people, a big family, and it was been brand newly refurbished, and there was it's very 80s, very pale powder blue carpet in this huge sort of dining hall about the size of a badminton court with this great big long table. And I think they'd had a bit of a brainstorm or something, but they pushed the table back and were almost doing like a little barbecue in the middle of the floor, and they cut a great big circle in the carpet and were putting a barbecue down because they didn't want to burn the carpet, so they cut a hole in it.
So they were cooking in the lounge.
They were cooking in the lounge, and they'd absolutely. I was very wet behind the ears and didn't know quite how to deal with this situation. I'm sort of umming and ahhing and saying, and the tenant saw a look on my face, and he was very upset that I was upset, and he disappeared off and came back waving this oversized check, and said, give this to your client. It's £50,000. It's like, okay. So
as an apology.
So I got back to the office and thought, I'm just going to have to make the phone call. So I phoned up my client and said, look, I've done the inspection as you asked me to. This is what I found. And of course, he went absolutely mental, not happy until I told him that he had a check. And he said, do you know what? They can burn down the whole house if they're going to pay me that. So that was quite a funny one. And another one where some group of very nice 3 girls were students in a property. The first time they'd been out of halls. Yeah. I've got their parents involved because there was damp in this property. It was on the 3rd floor of a quite a well-kept block of flats, just over in Kingston upon Thames, overlooking the river. And they were adamant this flat was riddled with damp and demanded a meeting. It was like 8 o'clock at night, and of course it fell on my shoulders as the MD to go along. And I took along my sort of senior property manager, and we went in there, and all the there's 6 parents there and the 3 girls, and all very much ready, and they'd already gone to the local papers, which and spread our company name all over it, how we were inept and all that, really bad. And I went in, and these girls, it was winter, bless them, they hung all their wet jeans up all over the radiators, and because it was cold, they'd sellotaped up all the air vents, nothing open, and it was condensation. I mean, it was dripping in condensation. But so I had to sort of explain, and when I showed them, because I thought, what's going on? So I pulled the sofa back, and you can see they'd sellotaped all of the vents up.
Because it was drafty.
Yeah, it's a bit drafty, but it's an old building, and that's heat and ventilate is how you get rid of condensation. And so that slightly backfired in their face, and I did actually get a printed apology in the local rag the following week.
Oh, well done.
Yeah,
Good work.
that was the result.
Yeah.
What about you, Alex?
So I'm not sure if they would be funny. I mean, I have stories, obviously. I've done quite a few property inspections myself in my time. I suppose the most recent one is just a new client actually that came to see us who are having some real difficulty with their current property because the tenant would back the oven, the backsplash to the oven, with tin foil and then set it on fire. And so I think they live local as well.
Why?
They got a phone call from the
Is that to
neighbours
stop the grease or
The mess.
to increase the heat and stop the grease, and they got a phone call from their neighbour across the road to say there's fire engines outside your rental property. So they turned up and they went in, and it had all caught fire at the back, and the cupboard had caught fire, and they'd had to make an insurance claim. And then they were like very insistent, you do not put foil at the back of the oven. And the fire brigade came in and they gave the same instructions. 3 months later, inspections there again. Yeah.
No.
So,
well, those girls, the student girls I was telling you about, towards the end of her tenancy, it's the only, in 25 years of running a traditional letting agency, the only fire we ever had was in that flat, because the girls, to get mood lighting, had put like a chiffon scarf over a bedside lamp, and it'd gone up. And of course, I've got a phone call in the middle of the night. Luckily, everyone was okay. Very well contained building. Great fire alarm. Everyone was out. No damage. But half the flat was absolutely gutted. And the first thing is you get a phone call from fire brigade, and I phoned up my senior property manager. We've gone around to property at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and everyone's okay. And that's the first thing. Once you know everyone's okay, the next thing is, please make certain we've ticked all the boxes. We have done the gas check. We have got compliant furniture. And you realise, okay, yes, we're okay. And of course, the tenants and the parents are screaming, it's your fault, it's you.
It's an unsafe property.
Yeah, unsafe property. And then we got the fire report, and it was chiffon scarf over the bedside lamp. So, but luckily everyone's okay. But.
Yeah. Let me safety is important, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, we've got both positive and negative stories for both tenant and landlord.
Yeah.
I only had one the other day, and we really shouldn't laugh, but we got a phone call about one of our tenants. Maybe I shouldn't discuss this actually. But,
You've started now.
I know,
You can't stop.
You've also said
we can always edit it.
I might change the story. Think of something else. I'm just wondering if it's still an active situation and thinking about the risk.
Yeah, you do get some. I mean, there's good and bad. I mean, I remember at Christmas time.
It's both sides, though, isn't it?
Yeah, both sides.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
But at Christmas time, you get some incredible amount of generosity from some of our clients who come in with crates of wine, and tenants would do the same.
There is the difference.
Yeah.
We don't get that in the online world.
We used to get, and
I
I used to.
Personal relationship, isn't it?
Yeah,
There's
it
nobody
is.
to give wine to.
I had 28 members of staff, and I used to divide them all up, and everyone would go home with between 12 and 15 bottles. Everyone, because we divide it up, so accounts who weren't client facing would all get a share.
Yeah.
And I used to think that was per office. It was very generous.
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't get that.
Yeah. No.
At Christmas, we take our stuff out.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many staff do you have then?
11 in total.
And all centralised in
Manchester. Everyone
Fantastic.
works out of the same office, all open plan, so everyone works next to each other.
Brilliant.
We have our developers sat right next to our call centre.
That must be handy.
It's brilliant.
That helps, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that they have days where they're like, oh my God, just let me go
Fed
home.
up.
Yeah. This isn't working. Can you just do this for me? No. So, but it works when it comes to testing things and actually from their point of view, if you just you go to an agency and you're answering the phones, I don't think you realise just how valuable your input is. But when you're sitting next to the tech team and you're hearing the conversations about product development, feature development, you start to realise what work goes into it, and you're as committed to the development of it, which is brilliant, because then you've got a workforce that all wants to see the same thing. So yeah.
Well, we have come towards the end of the podcast, so it's time to thank you both. Thank you very much for
Elliot.
coming on.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hopefully people out there have got some valuable insight into both the high street lettings agency and online as well, and the value that both can provide.
Yeah.
And what OpenBrix are going to bring to the table in autumn going to get those costs down for you, Alex, definitely.
So I love blockchain.
What?
I love blockchain.
Oh, well,
Can't
there
wait.
you go. Most people's eyes glaze over when you see blockchain, but it's
Oh, not me. No.
it's just the road we put it on. So yeah, that'll be exciting.
Indeed.
Looking forward to that.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. I hope you found some nuggets from the podcast that can help you in your career and business. If you want to get in touch with us, see how we're doing, how we're developing, then please visit openbrix.co.uk. That's OpenBrix with an X.